time.
Thank you. Congresswoman Waters.
Thank you very much. Again, as I attempted to communicate to the previous panel, I'm so very proud of you, and I'm so very, very sorry that this president led us into this war, and that the members of Congress have not had the courage to learn and to understand what has really been happening here, and to stop the funding. As a matter of fact, we just voted on a rule, and the bill for supplemental funding will be up today, I guess, in 2 hours. And that supplemental funding request is about $170 billion more dollars to continue the war. And we fought to try and separate the funding from other issues. We met with the leadership and we said the members deserve an opportunity to vote up or down on this issue. Don't pile the funding up with a lot of domestic spending to make people feel bad that they're not supporting extension of unemployment or they're not supporting other kinds of things. And so we did get that. We advocated for that. They did separate it. So the funding resolution is going to be separate. And for all those people who say that they want to end the war, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. If they vote for this supplemental appropriation, they're not serious about ending this war. They have two other portions to the bill. Amendment number 2, where basically they have a lot of other conditions, but they have, the first part of it is a little bit tricky because they say that there will be an attempt to start redeployment within 30 days with an absolute end to the goal of an absolute end to the war by December 09. I'm nervous about that because that's too long. That's December of 09. We have had some targets before. We have always been for getting out as quickly as possible. We know that it takes some time to wind down and move equipment and redeploy, and we've always thought 6 months was a reasonable amount of time to talk about doing that. We've even entertained the idea of maybe 1 year, but now, you know, it's further out with this December 9, so I know that I'm voting against the first part of the war. I'm uncomfortable with it going until December of 09. And the third part, where there are some conditions the separate amendment I could support. So I'm going to be talking with my colleagues before we take that vote to take a look at that second amendment that talks about winding out, starting deployment within 30 days. And 30 days of what? Does anybody know what in 30 days of what?
Being sworn in, new president.
Of the new president. Well, see, that takes us to January. Within 30 days, that starts in February, and then it goes on until the end of the year. That may be just a little bit too long for me, even though I'm anxious to get some kind of language that talks about getting out. That's taking it a little bit too long. Now, December 09, that's a little bit too long for me. But I wanted to share that with you so that you'll know when you're talking to members of Congress who are telling you all these good things and how much they are supportive and they're against the war. You take a look at that vote today and see who's voting for that money to continue the kinds of things that you have described here to us. Let me just ask Mr. Gilligan, I think you said that you would be willing to name generals. Was that you that said that, Mr. Gilligan?
Ma'am, I don't believe I said that.
Who said that?
I said that I would be willing to provide names of all personnel involved, units, locations, and grid coordinates, times, and dates of all incidents mentioned in my testimony.
Okay, thank you very much, and I will be talking with you about that. Let me just try and focus for a moment on Fallujah. I know that there have been a lot of confrontations and a lot of fighting in different areas, but for some reason Fallujah loomed large at the point that we were learning about it and the images that we were seeing coming back about Fallujah, and it looked as if our military was going door to door, kicking down doors, and shooting anything that moved. Is that a correct assumption? Could you just describe a little bit what happened in Fallujah?
Well, I believe what you're referring to is the second battle of Fallujah, November. I was there for the first battle when the primary military action was the siege of the city. And I was there for the whole interim period in the summer. I left in September of 2004. But what I saw was that at the Civil Military Operations Center where I worked is that we created the Fallujah Brigade and handed over security of the city to this brigade of Iraqi security forces. And we knew, and I as a sergeant knew, and all of my Marines knew, that by June of 2004 we were essentially arming and equipping the insurgency in Fallujah by providing supplies for what we called the Fallujah Brigade. And we waited until August to disband, announce that we were disbanding the Fallujah Brigade, and ask that members turn in their American-issued ID cards and uniforms and weapons, and told them that if they didn't, they would never get another federal job. And the reason we were able to say that was because despite the handover of power happening on June 28th, we were still handling all payroll for the Iraqi security forces, at least where I was. And we didn't go into the city of Fallujah for the second battle until after the presidential elections of 2004, because I believe that the president knew he could not get elected with the headline of 20 Marines dead in downtown Fallujah, which I believe is what it would have been had we gone through when we knew, at least by our thinking at the time, that we would have had to go through Fallujah. And not only did numerous Americans die unnecessarily in that battle, because as ignorant as people were to what it meant that there were 8 battalions poised outside the city of Fallujah, the insurgents knew, and they were ready for the soldiers that went in. And as it was, almost 100 Americans lost their lives in that battle. But not only that, numerous Marines died every single day maintaining that loose cordon of Fallujah throughout the summer of 2004. But what it's made clear is that this administration has chosen a policy for this country that values looking good over doing right. And as soon as you choose looking good over doing right, you will fail miserably at both. It is what we are doing as a country right now. It is what our leadership is doing, and it is what the Democratic Party has done since it took power in 2006, when it decided that it would be more concerned with looking good than doing right in terms of the policy towards Iraq in order to secure an advantage for the 2008 election. My apologies to members of the Democratic Party in the room, but it is clear to me that that policy of looking good over doing right has been established firmly by this administration and has poisoned not only the military culture, but our entire society and political leadership as well.
So would you conclude that in Fallujah, when our soldiers went in, that whatever the command was, whatever the instructions or the orders were, that some of our soldiers who died there died because of poor command, a lack of...
I think the manipulations that led to the unnecessary deaths in Fallujah happened at the highest policy-making levels. There were State Department personnel present during the negotiations that created the Fallujah Brigade at my facility, and it is those manipulations of the process that led to those deaths. I don't think even the generals who were conducting those battles had any say in the timing or the actual conduct, really, of those engagements.
Thank you. And finally, the civilians who died there, who were in those houses where it appeared that our soldiers were sent to kick down the doors and to shoot anything that was moving. Is it reasonable to conclude that that policy was not a good policy, that people died needlessly, soldiers and civilians?
Well, in terms of kicking down doors, I believe you're referring again to the second battle of Fallujah, so I'm not going to try to comment on that. But the way that the siege was handled absolutely led to the unnecessary innocent deaths of civilians. And one of the things we were tasked with at our Civil Military Operations Center was paying of salacia payments, or battle damage claims, as we called them. And we distributed a couple $1 million that way. I was interviewed by Al Jazeera because doing something like this was historically unprecedented. But we would turn around and pay people what it would cost to rebuild their homes had we destroyed their home by accident. So somebody coming to our facility filing a claim might get $25,000 for the home that we accidentally dropped a bomb on, and $2,500 for the son that was killed in that accident. And that just... goes to show the relative value of life that Americans have, or the value that Americans place on Iraqi lives based on that policy that we carried out there.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir.
All right. Congressman Ellison.